I've been enjoying your take on Kamala Harris's economic plan. I did have a question. I think you're right, of course, but how in the world do we know anything? Because she really isn't telling us a lot.
Well, it sounds like the Obamacare kind of a situation. You'll know what's in it when you vote for it.
Yeah, that makes me nervous.
It makes me more than nervous because we know the playbook of the party. It almost doesn't matter who is at the helm. They're going to implement their plans regardless of who's in charge. But it's just a new driver at the wheel with the same agenda.
Kendall, you ran against Walz. For my money, you should have been governor. Or did you run against Walz? Yeah, of course you did.
Yep, I did.
Yeah,
I did. I did. I ran for that seat, and we had a contentious convention. Scott Jensen won it. I endorsed him, so we would be unified as a party.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it didn't come to fruition.
Kendall, I want your take on this. It seems that we didn't know who Walz was at all. Maybe you did, but many of us did not know who he was. And boy, we're learning more every day.
Well, you know what's interesting? There are two types of Democrats right now that are in the party. So I'm not talking about the voters. Most Democrat voters, I believe, they still think it's still Bill Clinton Democrats.
Yeah.
They're not. They're not. It is not the Bill Clinton Democratic Party. So there's two type of politicians in the Democrat. Those that truly believe in it. It's the AOCs. It's the Ilhan Omars, if you will. Mm-hmm. And then there's another group that hides the fact of what their agenda is really all about. They don't want anyone to know, and they're nice to have a nice shiny face, and they try to hide it as much as they can. You know, you think about like a Dean Phillips, and as well as the Tim Walz. He'll talk the party talk. He'll talk moderate. He'll talk middle of the road. But their votes are 99% the same as Ilhan Omar, Alicia, Tlaib in Michigan. They're the uber left party. They don't want anyone to know it.
And they might very well succeed, and then we might have buyer's remorse, I would think.
Yeah, I think this time it's going to be more than buyer's remorse. I think the country will be shaken to its core. It's sad, and you'll have a lot of people that will believe that the country, as they have known it for a long time, that all their lives have completely gone, even more so than it is now.
Kendall, can the country be shaken to its core? Are we overreacting?
Well, let me give you an example. What's happened, and the media doesn't shed the right type of light on this as it should. You just can't let 10 million people into the country. You don't know anything about their background. You're dumping them in locations that dramatically changes the demographic, not only the demographic, this is the belief system, because, the United States, our country, is not a country of an ethnic group. We're not like Japan or Russia. You're Russians or these, we're a country that believes in an idea, the idea of America, the founding fathers, the founding documents, the Constitution. And if you don't believe in the Constitution, if you don't believe in the Declaration of Independence, if you have no significant understanding of those things or even embrace them, then there's nothing that binds us together as a nation, and we're losing those ties that bind us together.
We learned yesterday. Many people had previously learned. I had come to it lately, but there's a professor in humanities at Macalester College in St. Paul that Walz has selected to be among those fashioning the curriculum for ethnic studies. And he's a guy named Brian Lozinski. And we have him on audio where he was saying critical race theory to him means this country has to be reconstructed. It has to start over. He thinks racism is irreversible, that if you're white, you're a racist, and it's irreversible, and he wants a new form of governance and a new, imagining a new country. And I don't think he can bring that about, but I think a lot of damage can be done.
Well, actually, he can bring that about, and it's happening right now underneath us in this much of a subtle way. Let me give you an example. Let me give your listeners an example.
Yeah.
Few years ago, there was a survey done, significant organization. I can't remember the name of it, but they done 41,000 Americans. And in this survey, only thing they did was to give these participants, the legal citizenship test. And for those participants, again, this was 41,000 people across the country.
Mm-hmm.
For those participants, anyone that was 60 and older, 74% of them passed the test.
Right.
It's not like these people were in school anytime soon. They were 60 and older. Anyone 45 years and younger, only 17% could pass it.
Good Lord.
And so let me tell you the significance of this. It's not like these younger generations are, lower IQ. They're not stupid. They're not dumb. They've never been taught the principles of who we are, what we are as a republic. What's significant about this is that you can't advocate for your country if you don't know anything about your company, or you don't appreciate your country, or you can't appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been taught all the sins of the country, but none of its virtues.
It's a shame, I think, to burden kids with this as young as kindergartners.
Oh, well, exactly. And no other country teaches their children they hate their country like the United States does in our public school systems and our universities. So that's why this professor that you mentioned, I think they can do it, and they've been doing it. They've been eroding that underneath our noses for the last, say, 10 to 20 years without us knowing about it.
But Walz has selected a guy who is on record as calling for the overthrow of the country.
That's right. What my wife likes to call it, and I agree, a bulletless revolution, basically what they're trying to do to our country.
Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy.
That's a perfect phrase.
It really is. And you don't need a bullet, do you? You don't have to have a bullet. It can be done this way.
Right now, all the major services, except the Marines, are way below their enlistment goals because, number one, no one wants to actually serve on the leadership that we kind of have. But, again, young people don't care. I mean, we have the least patriotic generation in the history recorded of our country because of what they've been taught, what they believe.
I not only agree with that, but I've seen examples of it. I don't know where to go with this. I didn't want to think that the country was at a turning point, but I'm afraid it is. I don't. I think you feel the same way.
I do, and this is why we're doing something about it. So we about 6-7 months ago, we launched this initiative to initiate private schools for poor and working class families, regardless of race.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're getting back to are the basics. It is really the basis of academic standards, but also teaching moral standards as well, and as well as civics. And so we're doing something about it. There are parents of all economic backgrounds, all ethnicity. They're wanting to get their kids out of the public schools because they know they're not getting an education. So they're getting all the woke stuff, but they're not getting any of the academic core disciplines that'll make them successful in their lives.
I didn't know how bad it was in Minnesota until I began to read the ethnic studies guidelines, and they're abhorrent. They're criminally cruel to young children who have absolutely no idea what the hell they're being told. It's just a crime to me.
It is a crime, and everything that you just said. Plus, I consider it borderline treason.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is they're mislabeling it. It's not even called. It shouldn't even be called ethnic studies.
Right.
It should be called Denounce American Studies.
Right.
Because one of the definitions is, since we know that the country it was built on white supremacy and as a caste system. So they use that phrase as a definitive phrase, and then they go on to have like a series of questions and objectives for students. they're putting in as an affirmative something that's an absolute lie.
Kendall, you continue to do good work. I appreciate it very much.
Well, Joe, let me just tell you that these schools, because we're so excited about them, we named them Washington Academies.
All right.
Because the public schools are stiff-arming our founding fathers, so we named it after George Washington and Booker T. Washington for symbolism. But we started in Minnesota, and we're getting calls all around the country. We've already launched one in Mississippi. We're going to be doing some in Detroit, Omaha. I got a call yesterday for interest in Arizona and Nevada. Out of Minneapolis, it's not going to be remembered for George Floyd and the riots and everything else. It's going to be remembered for the resurgence of the American dream and the values that we all hold dear.
Where can I send GLers to learn more about this?
Yeah, you can go to takechargeus.com,
Yep.
takechargeus.com,
Yep.
and they'll find the schools on our tab there for academies, Washington Academy.
Takechargeus.com.